All right, I asked you to turn in some questions, and I want to read a few of these. But I've got one right at the start before we start any of these. You mentioned, and I've read, that about 60% of the nation was not alive when the genocide happened. So over half the nation has no memory of that. Talk about that. You've got two different groups of people that you're trying to lead. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, in fact, to be more precise, it is 58%.
58%.
Yes, which is close to 60% of people.
I'm always exaggerating. What can I say? I put in 2 more percent. So.
Right. Who are 25 years and below. That means these people don't know, except from stories.
Yeah.
No
personal experience.
And yes, they don't know much about the history we are talking about of genocide, what led to it, and so on. So this is a very interesting category. In a sense, these are young people who have interacted both within our country, and a number of them have been having studies. They've gone to schools in our country, outside of Rwanda, here in the United States, and other places across the world. So this is really an innocent category. You cannot say all of them. You cannot say they had the hand or anything to do with the tragic situation we had in our country. Now, this is a category that we can look up to in many ways, that will, well, the others, even those who are really below 30 and below, who by the way form 75%. It is 25 and below, 58%, 30 below, 75. So all these, 75%, all these are people we can look up to and say they will make very positive contributions to the continued development of our country without any. So we just have to protect them from the old politics of those of us who are in the other category, the remaining 25% who might have had. But even then, that category has also been, I think, reforming, getting better, and understanding better what the needs of our country are and what we can do together as a nation. But the 30, the 60%, the 58, the 78%, these categories that overlap the hope and the future of our country, because they have investments have been made in them. Families have made investments in their children, and the government, alongside that, we have made our own, contributed to making sure that these young people find knowledge, find skills, find things that will enable them to build a stronger country, stronger Rwanda, and bring about prosperity that is required.
You know, as the genocide gets further and further away as years go by, there will be revisionism, there'll be people who try to change the story of what happened, and there will actually be people who will deny it. And I know that when people say, well, I've read articles in America that say, well, they're limiting free speech by letting people not deny it. I said, wait a minute. 13 nations in Europe have denial of Holocaust laws, that it's against the law to deny the Holocaust. 13 nations in Europe. So why is it okay for them to say, we don't accept anybody who wants to deny the Holocaust? And yet, when Rwanda has someone who wants to deny it, they say, well, you got to have free speech. That doesn't make sense to me. It seems to me that you're going to have to teach each generation, and you as a leader understand this, to understand what happened so it doesn't happen again.
Very important thing we have found from within ourselves and tried to develop is for us Rwandans to not wait for what is going to be given us by people from outside,
Right.
but to do as much as we can for ourselves, as we also put to good use the kind of support we get from friends and others who have chosen to work with Rwanda from across the world. In other words, some of these aspects of denial or different stories told that are far from the truth do not deter us from doing what we must do for ourselves. And deniers will always be there. They were there even during the Holocaust. They are there in the form of individuals, sometimes organizations, institutions, or even countries. But what we have concentrated on is to build the internal capacities, domestic capacities in Rwanda, but also help constantly bringing out the truth there are facts, there are things you can't destroy that will live forever. So I'm sure these deniers have a hard time having to deal with these facts that they can't get rid of. But sometimes deniers are there to distract you and take you away from doing what is good for you and make progress and put you on a path like that one which created the genocide in the first place. So these debates will go on forever, or for a very long time. We are very conscious of that, but we also, and Rwandans, I'm saying I'm talking about all Rwandans, are determined to pursue that course that brings to Rwanda what we want, what we deserve, and that is prosperity, that's development, that's unity, that's stability. So that is something at which we are working every day, every moment, and then on the other hand, we fight these deniers as well.
Of all of the developments that are going on in Rwanda, which development are you the most excited about?
It's not just one. Maybe you can look at it in a combination of developments. One is the way the country has rallied and come together. In fact, so fast, I can say the last 24 years, seeing the country getting united and coming together and, neighbors appreciating each other and again becoming a family, that is a starting point. And we must have that before we talk about any other development. So, and with that, the other message is the change of mindset, which I alluded to in my earlier comments, where Rwandans increasingly understand their responsibilities. They know there is a lot of work we have to do ourselves, and Rwandans are no longer the people who sit back and wait for people to come and do good for them or provide what they require. The earlier message you gave, which was important, is Rwandans want people who can work with us, but also enable us to work for ourselves rather than people working for us.
Right.
So those are two essential developments that give rise to other things required. So other things mean, therefore, social and economic transformation. We see, we have made sure that every child goes to school. Where the parents cannot afford, the government steps in more or less as a parent to make sure that that is the case. The other is, we look at the health sector as well, the kinds of investments we've made in the health sector, where everyone has the benefit of health insurance. So health insurance coverage takes care of about 88% of our population, effectively. So with that, with a nation that has reconciled or continues to reconcile with these developments, we are creating a nation that is stable, and we are always looking at long term. So it's not stability of just for a moment. Yeah. It's the stability for the long term that we are looking at.
One of the keys to stability of nations, as I've seen around the world, is having stable neighbors, and you don't always have that. Here in America, we have two neighbors. We got Canada and Mexico. They're both very stable. We don't have any problem. So, but Rwanda has a lot of different borders, and those borders aren't always stable because those countries aren't always stable. How do you deal with that as the president?
Well, that adds to our problems, evidently. Evidently, that is.
Yeah, right.
But we have also discovered that the more problems of this kind that we have been facing, I think the more lessons we learn, the harder we work, and the better we get. I think we've been really emerging even on the hands of...
One.
Thank you. Even on the hands of the challenges we face, we get more hardened and learn many lessons, even the hard way. So when I was talking about building the internal capacities of our country, it's also about the internal stability, but it is also to build that resilience within our systems so that the challenges coming from outside do not destabilize us. All that happens together. And so far, so good. I think our people have kept together against any challenges. Challenges, whether they are internal or external. Our country holds together and we face it together. And we have, in many sectors, built the kinds of capacities that are required.
I understand there are a lot of traditions in Rwandan weddings. It goes on and on and on. Is that true?
Forever, almost. It goes on and on and on forever.
So let me ask you, so what's it going to be like to be the father of the bride?
Well,
Yeah,
maybe,
that's what I thought.
I should be asking you because you for advice, but I think it's going to be enjoyable.
going to be fun.
I love it.
I love it. All right. So, are you getting some cows?
Yes, inevitably cows have to come along. Traditionally, just don't get a bride for nothing.
I told the president that I recently acquired a farm, and it's not a big one; it's just a little one. And but years ago, he gave me a Rwandan cow, and I didn't have any place to put it, so it's at his place. So I'm trying to add up how much the milk of about 15 years is worth, because I'm sure I haven't been getting the profits from that cow. But he has. And so earlier today after the service, I said, I want my cow. Because I now have a farm to put my cow on, and I want, these beautiful Rwandan cows have these giant horns. They're so gorgeous. And the milk, oh baby, it's just, the butterfat content's really, really good. And being a purpose-driven eater, you asked us to pray for you. We will. Is there any particular challenge that you would like for us to pray for?
Well, the challenge many challenges we have faced, but the most important one which we look at every day is sustainability of what we've been building. Yes, sustainability. We don't want short-term progress or short-term successes in what we are doing. We want to think long-term. We want to see 20 years ahead, 30, where are we going to be? So that with these successes we have already registered, we want to continue the growth, we want to continue the sustainability of this, not ups and downs.
Okay, so you problem with the mics. You heard that. We want to pray for sustainability. So consistent, continual, systematic progress in the nation. You are really, in many ways now, the envy of Africa, because everyone is a little jealous that there's so much success there. What are you the most proud of in your country?
It's the way the whole nation has pulled through these difficulties, has come to go through the many challenges. The first pride comes with that, in my view. The response, the contribution, the whatever, people coming together and standing up for themselves to build a nation, given our history, I think is something that always needs to be looked at with pride and appreciation.
Amen. That's great. So I think I've asked most of these questions here. Oh, this is a good one. What advice would you give to other leaders, even political leaders, on how to regain unity as a nation? Do we need that in America? Set the standard for us.
Let me say this again. In fact, part of the earlier question you asked, which I didn't explain, as you rightly said, jealous sometimes becomes part of the problem.
Sure.
But we always have been guided by also some level of humility. We want not to have this good progress being made go so much into our heads. So We always want to. So we always assure our friends, our neighbors across Africa that, and we have shown it practically that we want to work with them, and we work with them. With that, I wanted to say we don't give anybody lessons. Yeah. We just say we do these things for ourselves. When they work for us.
They work for us.
And if our neighbors or beyond people want to pick anything from what we've been doing or share whatever, in fact, we encourage that by going out to other people to learn from them. And as we share our own experiences and what we have done and where we are and what has worked for us and what hasn't worked, we also learn from them I think what we've been good at is applying these lessons learned to actually have the results, get the results. But otherwise we learn from other people other than having learned from our own challenges.
I don't know if you just saw what happened, but this is an example of true leadership. Leaders are learners. The moment you stop learning, you stop leading. Growing churches, growing organizations, growing businesses, growing nations require growing leaders. The moment you stop growing as a leader, the organization or the church or the government or whatever stops growing. And when I asked the president a question about what other people could learn from him, he flipped it. I don't know if you noticed. He flipped it, and he said, well, we're learning from everybody else. That's the mark of leadership. That's the mark of leadership. And that is the kind of humility that God blesses. That's the kind of humility that God goes, I'm going to bless that guy. I learn from everybody. I learn from churches bigger than us, churches smaller than us, churches who don't like us. I learn from critics. I literally learn from people who don't like me. I learn from enemies. Why? Because I'm more interested in learning than being popular. And if you can learn from anybody if you know the right questions. And you just saw exhibit A of leadership, where he flipped the question and talked about, we're not trying to teach anybody anything, we're trying to learn from everybody, which is why this nation will continue to be blessed. Now, that is a mark of humility. Go ahead, you can clap for that. That's what wise leaders, that's what uncommon leaders do. They're always flipping it and going, what can I learn from you? But it's okay for me to say other people should be learning from him, and I do. And we, as people have watched the development in Rwanda, watched the growth of Rwanda, and watched the small role that peace and the churches, the 4,500 churches who've been involved in purpose-driven in Rwanda, as other churches and other nations, and I told you about 7 or 8 different presidents have called me and say, we're interested in the Rwanda model. Well, they are a model. They are a model. And they started asking us to come to their countries, and I said, well, why don't you come to Rwanda? And so David, Sean, and Mike Constance, where are you guys? Are they here? Okay. Oh, they're at the back. They started bringing the other national leaders from the, I don't know what it is, 56 different nations in Africa to Rwanda, and we said, we're not going to sell you on this. We're not going to try to convince you. We want you to just look at what's happening in this nation. And in a word, they were blown away. In a word, they said, I've never seen anything like this. And that's how the peace plan started getting spread to all of these other nations. And then I started to mention that the Asians and the Latin Americans started saying, can we come observe what's happening in Africa? We said, sure. So they've come, and now I'm happy to announce that in October, I believe it is, of this year, we're opening up the launch of the All Latin America Peace Plan based on what's happened in Rwanda, and it's now is happening in many, many other African nations. So while he can't say, we're a model, learn from us, I can sure say it. He's a model, learn from them. So I want to close with having a prayer of blessing on Rwanda in remembrance of those who were lost in the genocide of the Tutsi. And then after that, I'm going to ask Pastor Andrew and Alyssa to come on stage in just a minute and close us. Andrew, as you know, was on staff here for many years in missions, and they live in Rwanda. They live in Kigali. They work with our leadership there, Archbishop Banda, Eric Munyamana, Mary Kamanzi, all of the board and the team, the good people who, we're there to serve them. We're just there to serve the Rwandans, and we love them, and we're just so grateful for our partnership, and I'm grateful for you. If you are a Rwandan and you're living here in the United States, I'd like to just recognize you. Would you just stand up? You're a Rwandan living in the United States. Look at this. Woohoo! Yeah. Amen. Amen.